Welcome back to Modern Politics. I'm Warren Baylog.
What's up, guys? It's me, Emily Yukis.
We are now in the fourth week of August 2021. We're going to talk about this major story that was broken on national-justice.com by Joseph Jordan, also known as Eric Stryker of the National Justice Party, who is also the editor-in-chief of national-justice.com. And the headline was exclusive. The FBI paid leader of Satanic pedophile death cult $82,000 to take over Atomwaffen division in order to brainwash, drug, and entrap its young members.
Jeez.
Which is quite a headline.
Yeah, what a headline.
So we're going to speak with Stryker here. We've got him. We're actually going to do a full interview with him as part of our series of National Justice Party leaders. He's the information officer of the National Justice Party. But I asked him to just come on the show tonight so that we can talk about this particular story, how he broke the story, and why it's so significant. So Stryker, thanks for coming on the show. This is quite a headline that you put out here this week. And you actually refer to a story that you published back in January that was also titled "Notorious Nazi, quote, in Nazi Satanic Group is an illegal counterintelligence operation controlled by two career FBI informants." Can you kind of just unpack this story for someone who has not heard anything about any of this? I mean, I looked up Atomwaffen just to see what the public might hear about Atomwaffen. And there's dozens and dozens of news stories. And one was from the New York Times in February of 2018. And they called Atomwaffen a tiny paramilitary neo-Nazi group linked to suspects in 5 killings in the United States, amongst the most violent groups on the far right. They banned it as a terrorist group in Britain and in Canada. Southern Poverty Law Center and the Anti-Defamation League have written about it. And they say that they are originated on the Iron March Forum, and that they are they call themselves National Socialists, but they somehow Satanist connected. I mean, can you explain this?
Atomwaffen started off as a small group of friends on an internet forum, Iron March, and they were genuine for the most part, and so they used to do memes together. So they would have nationalist-themed memes. It actually was very much an art project as much as a political project. The leader of the group, Brandon Russell, was arrested on very specious charges because they were very active putting up flyers on college campuses across the country. And the leader, Brandon Russell, was arrested in 2017. Frankly, this is the actual story with that. So Brandon Russell had a bunch of equipment to power model rockets. And the FBI said, well, you could technically make a bomb with this. And so they locked him up for that. Totally railroaded the guy. Whatever you might think of him, he did not get a fair hearing in court, So, anyway, in early 2018, this guy, Josh Suter, got together with a couple other people and essentially changed Atomwaffen completely. The ideology, the internal culture. They declared that everyone in the group would have to read a series of books that were written by Suter. One of them is called Bluebird. The other one is called Iron Gates. These are printed by Martinet Press, which is owned by Suter, that we now know through court documents was funded by the FBI as part of an intelligence operation. So these two books and every other book that's promoted and published by Martinet Press reflects satanic ideology.
Well, so let me just stop you there. Did he take over the group, or had he been a member of the group all
along? Suter met Cameron Denton in approximately 2016. And according to certain people that knew them both, he began to influence Denton into this ideology. Souter was essentially the guy running the group.
And who was Cameron Denton is separate from, you mentioned Brandon Russell. So was he who was the leader?
Well, that's up for debate. Now, the mainstream media has declared Cameron Denton to have been the leader in 2018. But the people inside of Atomwaffen tell me that there really wasn't a leader.
Okay.
But there were influential members, amongst them Souter, who was definitely guiding the ideology of the group and infusing it with this satanic, pedophile, murderous philosophy. So Souter, the FBI operative, was writing the ideological books for this group in 2018, and many Atomwaffen members actually left the group at this time because of how morally repugnant the materials in these books were. So in these books, Iron Gates, Bluebird, and so on, you have depictions of violent rape and torture of children. You have mass murder. You have genocide. You have acts of sadism and cruelty. Everything you can imagine. It's one of the most obscene and pornographic books that's ever been officially published.
Was this was this originally meant to be like ironic, like, haha, look at this edgy of all edginess stuff?
That's a good question. From my interviews with people that witnessed Souter's rise and that have known him for many years or have crossed his path, that material is not ironic. And the reason it's not ironic is because Souter also controls a satanic cult called the Temple of Blood. And the philosophy, and the Temple of Blood is not an ordinary kind of Anton LaVey Satanist group. Because as we know, LaVey Satanism is mostly just basically a edgy atheism.
Right.
No.
Yeah.
The Temple of Blood endorses actual ritual murder. It's part of a network called the Order of Nine Angles, which has been found to be committing ritual murders all over the world. And these ritual murders and rapes and acts of sadism, these are all part and parcel of the ideology of the Temple of Blood. So let me just go over this real quickly because it starts getting confusing.
Okay.
Yeah.
The FBI operative controls a satanic pedophile murder cult called the Temple of Blood. This murder cult took over Atomwaffen, and through the murder cult's publishing house called Martinet Press, began brainwashing people as young as 13 years old in Atomwaffen and affiliated groups. This was paid for and likely directed by the FBI. Now, the question now is, is the FBI in control of the satanic cult, which is its own thing? It's not Atomwaffen, it's Temple of Blood.
Well,
does the FBI control that? That's the question.
Can you trace how this came to be known that the FBI was involved, and can you tell the story of how you broke the story behind the story, how you broke the story back in January, what information you had, and then what's significant about the story that you just released?
Well, I'm probably the only journalist in America that has been following the FBI very critically for the last 2 years. So one day I received an email from an individual that this was after the big Atomwaffen arrests in 2019, 2020. I received an email from an individual that was close to some of these people that told me this fantastic sounding story, like fantastical story. I mean, I didn't believe it when I first heard it.
Right.
So I asked this person to give me some kind of lead to put me in touch with other people that may have seen this stuff going on. And they did. And so I did my own research. I dug through court records going back to 2003, civil lawsuits, and I found a long track record of people that have accused Joshua Suter, the FBI operative, who has been officially confirmed in court as working for the FBI since 2003. He was arrested in 2003 for buying an illegal gun, and then he was released in 2005, where he was officially an FBI confidential informant. And so I traced back this paper trail, and I found associated with Suter and his girlfriend, Jillian Hoy, accusations of murder, of attempted murder, not murder, attempted murder. There was a instance in the 2010s where Suter attempted to take over a pro-North Korean activist group, and the people in the group accused Suter of trying to assassinate their leader. And it's almost certain that he was doing this on behalf of the FBI. Suter was trying to assassinate the leader, allegedly, to take over the group so that he could get close to North Korean leadership, because people in this group were associated. They're kind of like a foreign influence operation by the North Korean government, where it's a legal organization. They're not doing anything illegal. They just sit and they read North Korean government texts and they discuss it and so on. And they're kind of like a foreign support group, right?
Yeah.
And Suter infiltrated it with his girlfriend, using his girlfriend to have sex with the leader, make him think that she was in love with him. And then the man was essentially poisoned. Now, I can't tell you that it was Suter that poisoned him. It has never been tried in court, but everyone in the group believed it was him.
Well, this first article that you published back in January, you really detailed this guy's whole history.
This is insane. This is stranger than fiction, man. I mean,
well, yeah,
this is like, you couldn't write a novel that's this convoluted. But this has all been verified by many documents that will be linked in an article in the description here if you guys want to investigate all of the receipts.
Well, Temple of Blood, OV Blood, I should say, and you have it. You trace it through his Aryan Nation years. His relationship with the FBI began 2002, 2003, and then you go through.
Let me just address the Aryan Nations. So there was a mentally ill man named August Christ III that used to run a chapter of the Aryan Nations, and you actually can find, I don't know if it's still on the internet, but August Christ used to go on Jerry Springer and things like that. He was a real, like, kind of a character. He was definitely mentally ill. So August Christ III ran Aryan Nations, and Christ got close to Suter. Suter got out of prison, was working as an FBI informant, and he already actually set up another man named Morris Gullett after getting out, who was also in the Aryan Nations, the Sons of Yahweh, they were called. And he got him drunk, and the person he was targeting, Morris Gullett, began talking a lot of crap about robbing banks. Joshua Suter was filming him. He was goading him to talk about criminal activity, and then filmed him secretly while he was drunk. And then the FBI raided Morris Gullett, and he had to go to prison for a conspiracy to rob banks. Completely.
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
And then while in prison, Morris Gullett wrote a letter saying that Suter set him up, that Suter was the FBI informant that set him up.
And what year was this?
This is back
Suter went, yes, this is in the aughts.
The aughts. This is like 2003, 2004.
Wow. This goes way back.
Yeah, 2005. There it is. May 12th, 2005 was the letter where he said it, that the guy was set up by an FBI informant.
And he names Suter.
Yeah, he named Suter. That's in 2005. So that's...
It's kind of amazing that this guy
years ago.
has basically infiltrated all these groups over the years and no one, it's never occurred to any of them that he might be.
Oh yeah. Well, you said that then that's when, and it was right after the Axis of Evil speech, 2003. Yep. That's when a guy named John Paul Cupp was able to travel to the DPRK, and he created a Songun politics study group in the United States, and that the North Korean government endorses such groups to educate people in foreign countries on their national ideology, Juche. But then apparently this other group was founded at the same time. What is it? The Rural People's Party?
Yes, the Rural People's Party was created by Souter and his girlfriend, and they were quacks. Like they combined all these different types of just basically just like they combined Jim Jones with Hinduism and communism and Nazism and all these different ideologies, but it's never actually a deep understanding of anything.
Right.
It's just for shock value on the surface.
Right.
So anyway, when he got in with the Aryan nations again with August Christ, he was able to convince Christ to endorse a project called Aryan Jihad, where the Aryan nations declared public support for bin Laden. This was, by the way, Souter's idea. I have this on many interviews with people that were in this movement at the time that said that Josh Souter's big thing was getting white nationalists to endorse Al-Qaeda. So August Christ was a mark, and he was able to successfully convince him to do that.
Right.
So after that, the FBI created a motorcycle gang called the SS Cavalry something or another. And this motorcycle gang, their ideology was that they were outlaw bikers, so they openly endorsed crime, but they were also Nazis, and they were also pledging allegiance to Al-Qaeda.
Wow.
So,
they got it all going on.
So Souter got August Christ to endorse this motorcycle gang as the official fighting force of the Aryan nations. It later came out, of course, that the SS Cavalry motorcycle gang was nothing more than an FBI honeypot.
Of course.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
And they basically got a couple of meth heads in that gang and wrapped it up. It was confirmed that it was a full-on FBI honeypot. This is also in documents and in public reporting. And this is part of a larger COINTELPRO program that was happening at the behest of Robert Mueller, who was the head of the FBI at the time, who ran a very in-depth COINTELPRO program that targeted various nationalist figures like William White, Bill White, who was a National Socialist Movement guy. Frankly, at the time, a very effective organizer.
Yeah.
And he actually has been suing the FBI for years from prison because he says that Joshua Souter framed him for the crimes that he's in prison for.
Right.
And he made these allegations years before Souter was outed as an informant.
Right.
And he's still actually fighting in court over these. He's trying to get FOIA documents, Freedom of Information documents, over this FBI intelligence operation that was run against him and other nationalist figures at the time.
This is incredible. I mean, this first article that you wrote back in January, I remember reading it at the time, and now I'm going through it again and just looking at the pictures. This very creepy woman that this guy was involved with, and the amount of different schemes and things that this, and you're saying he was. So when was it confirmed? I mean, it's suspected that he was an FBI informant, but when was this confirmed?
Well, I was able to deduce from, the January piece was one of the most heavily investigated and time-consuming things I have ever written on national-justice.com.
Right.
I interviewed at least 10 people that were involved or saw this happening. They provided documents for me, primary sources and secondary sources, that essentially the only conclusion that you can come to is that Joshua Suter was an FBI informant. And I will go one further. I believe he is also, it's deeper than that, in other words. I think that he also operates in some capacity as some sort of operative or informant for the CIA. Because a lot of the operations that he's run have a foreign nexus.
Yeah, I noticed that with the fact that Britain was able to, the UK was able to ban this group as a terrorist group, which they have very serious, that's a very serious thing. If you're even suspected with joining the group or supporting the group, they can sentence you. It's the Terrorism Act 2000, carrying sentences of up to 14 years for members or those who invite support to the group. This is what I read. So I mean, it seems like it's a perfect catch-all. If you have groups like this, and then Canada, and then you have the North Korean connection, are there others?
Estonia, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, the reason I think, and again, this is more speculative. What's 100% confirmed is that he's an FBI informant, that he's being paid by the FBI to run these operations. What isn't yet confirmed is that he also is working with the CIA. And the reason I say that is that people have made contact with him for the first time in foreign countries. Right. So a lot of the Atomwaffen guys had never met Josh Suter until they went to a black metal concert in the Ukraine. There was an Azov Battalion black metal concert where he introduced himself to this group of friends in the Ukraine. And when it comes to the North Korean study group, it's very obvious. What is known about that is that he made a very strong play for the leadership of the group, and he used his girlfriend, another FBI informant, to use her sexuality to sleep with John Paul Cupp and try and manipulate him until convincing him to make Suter basically the second in command of the group. So the idea that someone may have poisoned Cupp to take control of the group and have access to his contacts in North Korea.
Right.
That is out, to my knowledge, that's kind of out of the scope FBI. Of the FBI.
Right.
That is CIA.
Well, let me ask you this. So the big thing that came out of the story that you just published is you were speculating still in January. All the signs were pointing to that this guy was an FBI informant, but now the court documents prove it. That's basically
some people have said that I was speculating, but in the article I wrote in January, I was not speculating. It takes a lot for me to say something on national justice. The editorial line is very strict on there. I don't just publish any crap that occurs to people that I get sent. I have to have compelling evidence to make a claim on there. And when I wrote that article in January, I didn't say I was speculating. Okay. I said outright, this guy is an FBI informant operative of some type. He's an intelligence operative of some kind.
Right.
I said that decisively.
Right.
I affirm that. Now, all that happened in recent weeks is that my reporting had secondary confirmation.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
And you say he's received over $82,000? That's what it says in the headline?
Well, you have to understand that is when this is on behalf of Caleb Cole, who is the only defendant still fighting his case in the big Atomwaffen bust. He's accused by the FBI and the federal prosecutor of sending the ADL a mean flyer.
Right.
And basically, his lawyer filed a document stating that the FBI hid in its collection of evidence the fact that all of the evidence against Cole was collected by Suter, who was an FBI informant.
Right.
Now, if you know what the law states, the precedent in federal law is that when the FBI files a criminal complaint or a search warrant, they have to disclose if they use an informant. And they have to disclose the informant's criminal record and whether they received money, because this could be a mitigating factor, because an informant could lie.
Right.
Money.
Right.
So the FBI hid this. The FBI has been incredibly cagey about disclosing the fact that they relied so heavily on this man. And the obvious reason for that is that, and I'll go into this now, is that they were engaging in illegal activities, even by the very low standard of rules in the Department of Justice for engaging in this kind of operation. They broke the rules. They broke protocol. And I'll explain to you how. So right now, I will disclose this to the public. I'm working on identifying an undercover FBI agent that worked with Suter in controlling Atomwaffen. This man went by the name Gibson. That was his nickname. It later came out that he was an undercover FBI agent because one of the Atomwaffen guys was interrogated by him after being jailed.
Whoa.
So Gibson, allegedly, and I have this from multiple eyewitnesses, including one who will go on the record soon with his own name, that lived with Caleb Cole and Cameron Denton, that Gibson was able to it started in a couple of years ago when Gibson went with Suter to visit Cameron Denton at his apartment in Texas. Suter and Gibson brought alcohol. The witness saw the undercover, not Suter, the undercover FBI agent provided alcohol to Cameron Denton and Caleb Cole. And the eyewitness had to go to work because he worked night shifts. But Cameron Denton that night confessed to allegedly swatting conspiracy.
Right.
So do you see a pattern here?
Yeah. And this is not just an FBI informant. This is an undercover FBI agent.
It's an actual FBI agent.
Yeah, this is just insane. Like,
yeah.
Who else would put all this together?
So a full-blown FBI agent. Let me ask you this, because this is one thought that occurs to me. At the end of your first article from January, you said that the Temple of Blood and the Order of Nine, is it angles or angels?
Angles.
Angles. You said that the videos, you said according to several pieces of literature authored by Suter and his accomplices in Temple of Blood, the group specializes in infiltrating right-wing groups and using psyops to bring out their sinister, this is the word he uses, which has a satanic, esoteric context side. Their stated goal is to push their victims to engage in murder, rape, and other forms of violence in order to sow chaos. Their videos on YouTube portray sadistic rituals ranging from self-flagellation to waterboarding. Another video by a man who receives their secret members-only publication, Predator, describes images of children being abused on film.
Oh my God.
So, and you said it's possible that these images and videos are fakes, but this is still being done with the backing of the FBI, subsidizing satanic, pedophile, and terrorist propaganda. My question is this. Are there names and faces, are there people, are there actual victims that can be connected to things that this Josh Suter has put out while he's been on the FBI payroll?
Yeah, like have there actually been...
Are there any victims that we could identify, or of people that were victimized by groups associated with this?
Or
guy?
like confirmed children that have been abused?
Well, I can say this. There were many instances in the United Kingdom of people that are adherents to the O9A, Order of Nine Angles, and the Temple of Blood, including one man who published a book in Martinet Press. And these individuals were part of an Adam Waffen link group in the UK. And they have been arrested for everything ranging from molesting children, possession of child pornography. Another one got arrested for planning a terror plot, allegedly. Very, very specious case, though. So there are a lot of arrests in the UK in particular connected to this stuff. Then there's also instances more recent in Canada and in Russia of people that are in the network, the same network as the Temple of Blood, the O9A network. It's a global network that have been accused and are on trial for ritually murdering people.
And what do you mean by ritually murdering?
Taking someone and literally murdering them in the name of Satan in a ritual, in a satanic ritual.
Oh my
So like
God.
just a snuff film.
I don't know if they filmed it or not. In Russia, they put a bunch of people in this network in a psychiatric institution and arrested others.
Right.
In the Balkans, this is a more recent case. Because let me tell you something about the philosophy of Joshua Suter, Temple of Blood, and O9A. It's not just white nationalist groups that they want to infiltrate. They want to infiltrate churches, Muslim groups. They want to infiltrate a lot of things. In fact, one of the themes in one of Suter's books is working with an intelligence agency to infiltrate groups and make them murderous and do horrible things.
Right.
Very interesting. It's kind of so. One instance of this is happening right now. It's a big controversy blowing up. It's in the Montenegro Orthodox Church. There's a couple, a wife and her husband, who have risen through the ranks of the Montenegrin Orthodox Church. As the husband is a priest. He's a high-level priest there. And it turned out that he himself is a member of the satanic cult. And his wife, there are pictures of his wife reading Josh Suter's books published by Josh Suter.
No way.
What?
Yes.
What the hell?
Press.
In Montenegro.
Montenegro. So the controversy erupted because this group, the Montenegrin Orthodox Church, again, this gets confusing, but hear me out.
Yeah.
Montenegrin Orthodox Church is not actually accepted as an official East Orthodox Church by the Patriarch.
Okay.
It is actually only endorsed by the Constantinople Patriarch, which has, since the Cold War, been a front for the CIA. Okay. So essentially, the Montenegrin Orthodox Church is actually very hostile to other Orthodox churches in the Balkans. Like, they're very anti-Serbian.
Right.
And this couple that is, they're leading, the husband is a leading cleric in this church, is also involved with the Montenegrin government. And he is confirmed to be a literal devil worshiper in this satanic murder cult.
And this is all books published by Martinet Press, which is being funded by the FBI.
Exactly. Which is, again, my CIA theory.
Right.
That there's a link with the CIA here.
Right.
There's all these, like, you know, so-called conspiracies of the FBI and the CIA and the government being involved in, like, ritual abuse, ritual murder, et cetera, et cetera. And here is an actual real evidence of that. I feel like finally we're actually starting to make the connection here.
Well, my next question is, who all has... I see a couple of news outlets have picked this up. You were the first one to report on this, right?
Yes.
So who all has picked it up, and how has the story traveled since?
Well, first of all, I personally am prescribed in most... It's kind of ironic, actually. A lot of conservative media that is more far right, that in theory would be on paper closer to me ideologically, they're afraid of people, of me getting any credit for it, which is fine. I don't care. This isn't about me. Like, this is one occasion where I'm going to put my ego aside.
Right.
Because I think this story is so important. The corruption here is so egregious. The victims are vast, okay? This isn't just a joke. There are people sitting in prison that were set up by this cult and the FBI in this capacity. And I want to get back to this guy, Gibson, who his entire evidence for the case against Cameron Denton, who was being tortured in prison, by the way, in jail. He was being tortured in jail, and he took a plea bargain just to make it stop. He hadn't seen the sun in a year. And so he took a plea bargain under duress because he was in pretrial detention in solitary confinement. And he took a plea bargain just to make it stop. But this guy, the case against Cameron Denton, was entirely built in a confession taken by an undercover FBI agent who filmed him while he was wasted.
Right.
A good lawyer would get that thrown the hell out in court.
When was he convicted?
Very recently, just a few months ago, he pled guilty.
Oh, wow.
Because he said he was running out of money. His lawyer was no good. The lawyer basically said, listen, man, we're shit out of luck. Just take the plea bargain. Right. You'll get out in a couple of years. And you'll get, more importantly, transferred to your permanent facility where you can actually get some exercise and a shower.
Right.
Okay, because if you're in solitary confinement, you don't see the sun. You don't know when you get to shower. You don't have any contact with the outside world. It's absolute torture. It's worse than the gulags to be in solitary confinement, especially when you haven't even been convicted of a crime.
Jeez.
That's insane.
So, anyway, I want to get to something else that I had two people tell me about this undercover FBI agent, Gibson. So, Adam Waffen in 2019, the summer of 2019, they had something called the Nuclear Conference in Las Vegas. Okay. And it was basically where they went to do paramilitary training. There was a young man that Joshua Suter groomed, a teenage boy that he groomed and initiated into his cult, named Richard Tobin. Now, Richard Tobin is currently in a psychiatric facility. He's on trial for alleged threats to a synagogue in New Jersey in a different Adam Waffen-linked case.
Okay.
Richard Tobin was a suicidal, mentally disturbed teenage boy that Suter groomed and into his cult and subjected him to all the cult rituals.
Right.
When Suter brought Tobin to the nuclear conference, I have witnesses telling me that the undercover FBI agent provided this young teenage mentally disturbed boy with psychedelic drugs.
My God.
Magic mushrooms.
Right.
The FBI agent provided the magic mushrooms to a teenage boy.
It's probably like, well, this is like Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
Well, this is very.
And I have to make sure I say alleged, but I have it on the word of two people that have no reason to lie about this, and they both gave me the same story, that they saw the FBI agent that always accompanied Suter provide the magic mushrooms to this teenage boy.
I noticed that this story, you had posted on Telegram, the story from the Intelligencer from New York Magazine from 2017. It was only a few days after the Charlottesville Unite the Right rally. It was August 16th. This escaped my notice, actually, at the time. But this story, man accused of right-wing bomb plot is mentally ill, was entrapped, family says. A 23-year-old man who was schizophrenic, I don't think he even could drive, and was basically provided with all the means and everything to set up to commit a crime. So apparently this goes back a long
I know
way.
what you're talking about.
Yeah, well, a report from Human Rights Watch, it said that this was from 2014. Human Rights Watch identified that this tactic is one of the agency's favorites when it comes to carrying out counterterrorism stings. And according to Human Rights Watch, they said, quote, the FBI often targeted particularly vulnerable people, including those with intellectual and mental disabilities and the indigent. The government, often acting through informants, then actively developed the plot, persuading and sometimes pressuring the targets to participate, and provided the resources to carry it out. So when I was looking at this, I was trying to find out more details on that story. I came up with an article from The Intercept from March 16th of 2015 about a gentleman named Sami Osmakak, who is a Muslim youth who did a recording about, he said some like terrorist sounding stuff. And apparently it says that he was the target of an elaborately orchestrated FBI sting that involved a paid informant as well as FBI agents and support staff working on the setup for more than 3 months. The FBI provided all of the weapons seen in his martyrdom video, gave him the car bomb he allegedly planned to detonate, even money for a taxi so he could get to where the FBI needed him to go. Says he was a deeply disturbed young man. According to psychiatrists and psychologists who examined him before the trial, he became a, quote, terrorist only after the FBI provided the means, opportunity, and final prodding necessary to make him one. So I guess
that's the case. Let me just make something clear here. The most shocking detail of that case. Now, this is something they did to Muslims. So
right.
There's more media scrutiny when it's a non-white victim of the FBI.
Sure.
With us, when they do this to teenagers that are white and have nationalist beliefs, it kind of floats under the radar. Although in this case, they have to report some of it.
Right.
But the most shocking thing about that guy, Sami Osmakak, is that the father was trying to protect his son from the FBI. So what happened was the father saw this FBI agent grooming his son, and the father told him to get out of his house and never come back. And then like a short time later, a few days later or something, the father comes home and finds that the FBI agent snuck into his house to access his son.
My God, did he know he was an FBI agent at the time?
No, he just thought he was a creep. And it came out later it was actually an FBI agent. It wasn't an informant. It was an undercover FBI agent. Broke into this man's house just to get to this young man, just to save the plot so that he could boost his own career.
Well, that's what it makes you wonder.
Disgusting.
I mean, are these people being told like, hey, you're not going to get the big raise unless you find some terrorist, you come up with one, or are you going to, I mean, what are the incentives?
Right now, every FBI agent that successfully prosecutes these politically motivated cases immediately gets promoted. Right. I can name one of the main investigators in the Ammenwaffen case, Jonathan Miles Lund. In 2019, he led the prosecution of these young men, and in 2020, he's leading prosecutions of the January 6th people from his office in Washington, D.C.
Wow. Unbelievable.
When it comes to the Gretchen Whitmer plot, a lot of the agents involved in that got promoted to different field offices. Okay?
Right.
And they to superior field offices because they don't want to work in Bumblefuck, Michigan.
Right.
They want to work in Washington, D.C., in New York, places where there's money to be made, career prospects to increase. Okay.
Right.
And so they will pull every trick up their sleeve that they can when they invest money. I mean, do you realize that there were probably millions, if not tens of millions of dollars wasted on this Ammenwaffen investigation?
Yeah.
I mean, this was probably one of the most expensive and elaborate. I mean, they had fake videos that they made. They had to travel across different parts of the country in the world. They had to go to the Ukraine. I mean, the amount of money and effort put into this. And it was simply because the Anti-Defamation League in 2018 was busting their chops that they needed white terrorists.
Right.
I mean, the money should have gone to fighting these like satanic ritual abuse cults of murder that the FBI is funding themselves. I mean, that's
yeah. The FBI is it's like would these satanic cults even exist if the FBI wasn't funding them?
I mean,
they wouldn't.
Yeah, you have an organization that's set up to break down terrorists' cells, find plots and illegal activity, and instead they're actually creating them. It's very similar to what we have in with ISIS.
I'm going to tell you one thing about Souter. The person I spoke to, one of the people I spoke to, had Souter on this person's Facebook. And this person told me that Souter on his Facebook openly would say, like, he would make allusions to being a child molester. Like, he would post stories about people that molested 8-year-olds, and he would say, "Ha, look at this idiot. He got caught."
God.
And this is while the FBI is cutting this guy and his girlfriend checks.
So I can tell you right now that people have sent stuff that Souter has said in that vein to the FBI to investigate to see if there's anything into what he's saying.
Right.
And it's always silence.
Yeah.
No investigation.
Well, what do you think the purpose of all this is? To stifle or to tar legitimate dissent, legal dissent, political dissent. I mean, which is essentially what COINTELPRO was. I mean, can you just say, for anyone who doesn't know, because some people don't know, what COINTELPRO was?
COINTELPRO was an illegal domestic intelligence operation where the FBI infiltrated the Communist Party, every pro-white nationalist group, black nationalist groups, anti-war groups. They infiltrated everything and pushed them to commit violent acts, violent crimes, murders. There's one famous case of Gary Thomas Rowe and the Ku Klux Klan, who was a long-term FBI informant that was involved in the Baptist church bombing where little black girls were killed that the media blamed on the Klan during the civil rights movement. He was also, other witnesses saw him, and this is a big deal in the 70s. This FBI operative was pointed out as the trigger man in the murder of Violet Leoza. This was like the biggest scandal that was blamed on the Klan by the New York Times in the 60s to discredit opposition to Martin Luther King's civil rights movement.
Right.
So the FBI has been doing this. I could even go even further to Eustace Mullins, who was nothing more than an author that was critical of Jewish people.
Right.
And he was able to FOIA in the 70s. He FOIA'd 500 pages of FBI operations taken against him personally to discredit him. They were working with the Anti-Defamation League all the way back in the 60s. This, of course, is lost in all discussion of COINTELPRO.
Right.
That they were working side by side with the Anti-Defamation League, which is the premier Jewish lobby in America, to essentially one plot that Eustace Mullins wrote about and provided documents for was a plot where the FBI attempted to frame him as a mentally ill person so that they put him in the psychiatric ward to silence him because he was exposing things like the Federal Reserve and Jews in the media and things like that.
George Lincoln Rockwell said that. He said, I'm the only one in this room who is certifiably sane. He says, because they tried to put him away, I guess, and psychiatrists had to actually examine him and say that he was sane. But that's the stuff we heard about in the Cold War. That was a very famous thing, that the Soviet Union wouldn't disagree with political dissidents. They would say that they were mentally ill and confine them to institutions.
And the U.S. government did the exact same thing.
That's incredible.
This probably was all born out of the outcome of World War II. All of these weird, freaky psychological operations that God knows how deep this stuff goes. Like, I feel like we're just scratching the surface.
Well, I mean, I could say that Stryker. I know about the original the committee, not the Committee on Public Information, but the House Un-American Activities Committee. That the Jewish congressman from New York at the time, who was heading the House Un-American Activities Committee, that was at the time, that's mostly associated with the McCarthyite era. But back in the 30s, it was aggressively going after the German-American Bund and trying to portray them as a Nazi fifth column in the United States, which they weren't at all. They were just an association of German Americans that had like camps and festivals, youth stuff. And
Usually, yeah.
well, let me just say that
Okay.
the congressman was Dickstein, Congressman Dickstein of New York. It wasn't until the Soviet Union fell and they opened up the archives in Moscow that they confirmed that this Jewish congressman from New York, Dickstein, was on the Soviet payroll, was being paid by Soviet intelligence, a hefty sum. It was like $2,000 a month, which was a lot in the Depression. And this is the guy heading up the Un-American Activities Committee, which was conducting a witch hunt against the German-American Bund and putting these guys in prison.
So all people that were anti-war, people that were opponents of the Second World War,
right,
were being brought before the HUAC, as they called it, and the person running it was a Jewish communist agent of the Soviet Union.
Agent of the Soviet Union. And that's another one of these stories. Like, this guy is a paid, a Satanist pedophile publisher, and he's it's one of these things. It's such incredible corruption.
Now, let me make it clear as well that I don't have any evidence that Joshua Suter has committed crimes like pedophilia.
Okay.
It could be part of a cover for his organization,
Sure.
the Temple of Blood. However, I've heard from many people that have met him that they think he's a genuine psychopath.
Right.
Like, he's not acting.
Right. Well, who else would what other kind of person would do something like this?
Yeah.